Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in this beautiful planet of ours. This is Marc, Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector, here for another Metaphysical Mocha Mondays. Good morning to you, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in this beautiful planet of ours. Going to give it just a second for everybody to get their coffee, get their tea, and join me. I got a little bit of an echo here. I am live here in Miami, Florida. So good morning to you. I'm going to just go ahead and pull up my iPad too so I can see who's joining me this morning because I am coming from my mobile phone. So good morning, Tamara. Good morning, Dave. How are you guys? So today we're going to be talking about self-worth and self-sabotage, something I think is very important for the spiritual journey. Good morning, Amy. For those of you that are just joining, would you guys be so kind to share out to a spiritual page or a local group just because I'm kind of a one-man show today. But good morning to all of you. It is Mocha Monday, so we need our coffee, we need our tea. So I've got a standard Marriott Hotel coffee cup here this morning. But this morning I'm going to be sharing with you self-worth versus self-sabotage because I feel, and I'm sharing a lot of my own journey with you, to be honest with you, because when I started to get into spiritual work and started to become working as a psychic, as a medium, there was a lot of battles that I had to go through myself. And so I want to give you just some tips to help you with self-sabotage, to even identify what self-sabotage is versus what's your self-worth. I always remind people the one person that you're going to talk to the most in life is yourself, is you. And we want to not have negative self-talk about what we're doing. So, pen down. So I'm on a little bit late. A huge rain squall just came through. I had to move everything inside, and then the sun came back out. So I am in Miami, Florida. I'm here at the JW Marriott Hotel all week. I will be doing readings after the show, so if you stick around for the prospecting Q&A after show, I will be taking live readings and also bringing you on if it's mediumship or if it's psychic. I'll be drawing a card. I'll have your crystals for the week and your totem animal spirit for the week. But if you would be so kind to just share to another group, I would totally love that. And for those of you that do share out, I do track that. And those of you that subscribe to my YouTube playlist, which is in the description of this video will premiere over on my YouTube channel, which has over 200 plus videos in my Soul Adventures library now. So make sure to subscribe so you can get all, not just the Mocha Mondays, but Inspired Living Radio, 4 seasons of Inspired Living Radio, hiking adventures, diving adventures. There's going to be a new dive video as I'm heading down to Key West here in a few days to actually go on another dive adventure, another soul adventure is what I like to call it. So for those of you that share out or subscribe to my YouTube playlist, you're entered into a 30-minute reading with me. And, the Spirit picks that person at the end of the month. So I've done April's reading already. That person has already been chosen. And unless you pick today, share today, then we'll enter you into the May reading. So good morning to all of you. I see a few of you joining on. Again, please share out the live feed to a few of your pages or people that you feel would be beneficial of receiving a message like this today. Because I want to talk about self-worth and self-sabotage for your spiritual journey, for your spiritual path, something that I went through a lot with myself. So I apologize if you guys could send me some like or heart so I know that the sound quality is okay. I do have a windsock on my microphone, but I am outside Miami. That's literally Miami right behind me. And then the ocean is right past that, and then right below me is a golf course. So if you could send me some height or some likes or hearts so I know that sound quality is okay. There's nothing worse than trying to watch a video that has poor sound quality. And like I said, this will be premiering over on my YouTube channel when I'm doing the prospecting Q&A after show, which starts at 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So let's talk real quick about self-worth and self-sabotage. And one of the quotes that I wanted to open up with, if I can get my iPad to open up here real quick, is self-worth is so vital to our happiness. If you don't feel good about you, it's really hard to feel good about anything else. And I found that to be true when my own spiritual path, a lot of my shows that I do are really just sharing my own journey, my own adventure. And there was a lot of things that I was unhappy with myself. I wasn't happy with where I was going. I wasn't happy with what I was seeing in life, what I was doing in life. And so you have to make changes. And one of the things I'm going to share with you, just a few tips today, is about what self-sabotage looks like versus your self-worth. If you're searching for that one person that will change your life, take a look in the mirror. It always starts with you. I always remind people that you come into this world alone and so shall you return. And it can be, if you get into the self-sabotage, because like I said, the one person you're going to talk to the most in your life is yourself. And if you get into the vicious cycle, what I call the low self-esteem, low self-esteem leads us to negative thoughts. Because if you think about where everything begins, just take a second, take a breath, join me in the magic of the moment, and just see where your thoughts are, because your thoughts become your words become your actions become your behaviors, and your behaviors lead you out into your reality in your life. And so, this vicious cycle of low self-esteem leads us to negative thoughts. That usually then leads us to high anxiety and poor performance, or poor performance based on our own values. And then we have this thing called failure, and I'll talk about that. And then we get into our self-blame, and we point the finger. So I always remind people, for every finger that we point out at somebody, there's 3 more pointing back at us. And sometimes that's a defensive mechanism, sometimes that's an ego response. But this vicious cycle that we get into as creatures of habit, I'm here today to help you break that habit. Metaphysical Mocha Mondays is an inspirational show. Whether you're on the spiritual path, whether you're not on the spiritual path, whether you have questions about life right now, if you have questions about life after death, all the things that I've gone through in my own journey. So if you're just joining, good morning to you. Make sure to get on my YouTube library. In the description field, there's a link. Make sure to subscribe. I'd love to have you as a spiritual prospector going through life in search of your own spiritual gold. If you want to learn more about the work I'm doing, you can go to marclainhart.com. You can internet search the Intuitive Prospector. You can find me through Best American Psychics, Best Psychic Directory, Ariel Spiritual Community, and I'd love to help you do a little spiritual prospecting for your own spiritual gold. So I am live here in Miami, Florida today. Going to be here for most of the week, and then heading down to the Keys to do some more sunning and golfing and a little bit of diving. But self-sabotage, a lot of times when we get into self-sabotage, it's really about faulty thinking. Our brains are wired. We cling to the familiar, is what I'm saying. A couple weeks ago, we talked about neuroplasticity, which is the rewiring of the brain in science. I'm a spiritualist, I'm a humanitarian, but I'm also very big when it comes to science. And I like to bridge science and spirituality because I think they go hand in hand, and I believe that the world is opening up and becoming more conscious. Now, I'm guarantee you I will have people that will post on here, or from a religious standpoint or from a political standpoint. I always just remind myself that some people call me crazy, other people call me for advice, and it's really none of my business what other people think of me. So I moved into my authentic path to become the Intuitive Prospector, to do this work, to be a spiritualist, to be a medium, to be a psychic by my choice. And it's funny that we don't think we can change our brains, and we really can. We had a doctor on a few weeks ago on Inspired Living Radio, which is every Wednesday. It's my live radio show, and then it goes over to podcast through the Om Times Radio Network, internet radio at 12 p.m. Pacific. And it's an hour show, and we had a doctor on talking about the opioid crisis and the opioid epidemic, and we talked about neuroplasticity, which is the rewiring of the brain. And the studies are showing that a lot of times you hear that you've learned what you've learned from an early childhood, and that's true. And it's conditioned you to be later in life to your thoughts and your beliefs and how you were living your life. But they've also shown that the brain is such an amazing supercomputer, well, that's why we call these the temples, that you have the ability to rewire your belief systems, to rewire your ways of thinking, and it's called neuroplasticity. So just do a quick research on that if you want. But a lot of times when we get into self-sabotage, because we're the only people talking to ourselves, we talk to ourselves the most in life, we get in our own way. We start to, like I said, that vicious cycle of negative thoughts that lead us to, performance issues, leads us to failure, leads us to self-blame. And one of the things that we want to do when it comes to self-sabotage is stop that cycle, get out of that pattern. It's kind of like that same concept. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different outcome. I don't know what I have on. Looks like there's like chocolate on the table. I'm hoping it's chocolate or it's bird crap. I just put my hand in. But sometimes that's what happens, connecting to nature, I guess. So faulty thinking, our brains are wired to cling to the familiar, and that's very true. And anytime we find that we're unfamiliar with something, we may move away from it, we may have a thought about it, we may fear it. It's like Joseph Campbell reminds us, the treasure we seek, the cave we fear holds the treasure we seek a lot of times. So if you're just joining me, grab your cup of coffee, grab your cup of tea. This is Metaphysical Mocha Mondays, inspirational messages for the week ahead. I will be live for the Prospecting Q&A after show immediately following this, as this goes over to my YouTube channel to premiere, where I'll be taking your questions, live readings, spiritual chats. Spiritual awesomeness is what I like to call it. And this morning I'm talking about self-sabotage versus your self-worth. And when we start to get out of that cycle of rewiring our brains, and when we cling to the familiar, we overestimate risk and we avoid new approaches. And so we want to break that cycle. And so this morning I'm here to inspire you and give you this information. And of course, your free will and your choice leads you to what you want to do next. So for those of you that study psychology, like myself, because I'm fascinated with the brain and how the brain works, it's known as the familiarity heuristic. And you can just look that up on your own. I'm not going to get into too much detail about it. But the familiarity heuristic, or heuristic, is it leads us to overvalue the things we know and to undervalue the things that we are unfamiliar with. So just take a second to kind of just process that. Familiar heuristic leads us to overvalue the things we know and to undervalue the things that are unfamiliar. So I'm a big believer in learning new things and stepping outside of my comfort zone. If you're in my spiritual development group online, one of the things you'll always hear me say is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because even the spiritual path, psychic, mediumship, metaphysics, spiritual healing was something that I wasn't aware of, to be honest with you. It wasn't something I was raised. I did have a religious upbringing in Catholicism, but it just never fit me. It never resonated with me. And not to speak bad about other religions, because religions are what are man-made and what you make of it, where you're born in the world. But it just wasn't my calling. And so I had a lot of unfamiliar things that were happening to me when my brothers moved into spirit, my father-in-law moved into spirit. I had never been introduced to murder. I'd never been introduced to brain cancer. I'd never been introduced to multiple sclerosis. I'd never had a near-death experience. And all of that combined with the biofeedback sessions that I had to go through to understand. I was actually mandatory that I had to go through biofeedback sessions in the start of my spiritual path. That's where that door kind of unlocked to the unfamiliar world of what I wasn't familiar with, and it was a very uncomfortable time. But I always remind people that no struggle, no wings. The butterfly needs to go through the cocoon phase to have that struggle so it can fly to and see a higher perspective. No pressure, no diamond. So this morning I'm talking about self-sabotage, and then we're going to move to self-worth. So when our brains are tired, we resort to old habits. And a lot of us are going, right? And our ways of doing things, so when we're tired, we're stressed, we go back to the familiar. We go back to our habits. Even if they don't work, even if they don't work well, we are drawn to be with the familiar. That's just us as a species, us as humans. Even when a different option offers a clear advantage, we still sometimes don't choose that. So first one is faulty thinking with your self-sabotage. So think about your faulty thinking. What is your thinking telling you? You don't have to believe everything that your thoughts tell you. Number two, fear of intimacy or rejection. This is a big one for some of you watching. I work a lot. I like to say that my spiritual consulting is about life, loss, and love. And with those, there's a fear of intimacy or rejection, and we all go through that. We are in an unconscious way. The mind has both conscious and unconscious, and what I mean by conscious is things that you're thinking about. When I say unconscious, those are things that are not like you're breathing right now. You've been breathing the whole time you've been watching me, but until I said you were breathing, you didn't really think about it. So I brought that into your reality. Or don't think of the big pink elephant in the room. Don't think of the big pink elephant in the room. Now I've brought that into consciousness. Unconsciousness is that ability of the body to protect itself, the ego to protect itself. And sometimes we have a fear of intimacy or a fear of rejection or a fear that we're not good enough. And in that unconscious ways in which our brains fear getting trapped or rejected, if we get too close to somebody or we get too familiar with something, a lot of times this comes from childhood relationships, parent upbringing, with caregivers, but it's a fear of repeating the past. And I'm always, I teach a lot on the magic in the moment and to get away from your memories of the past, because your past is not real. It's your memories that create the past and make your past come alive. But there's nothing you can do about your past, right? It's that river that flows. You can't ever stand in the same river twice, right? Because it's a flowing. It's like life. You can't stand in the same place. Well, you could, I guess, but you get what I'm saying as far as your memories. You can't go back and change those. A lot of us would, right? But it's just like your imagination creates a future that's not yet been established or is guaranteed. So faulty thinking, fear of intimacy or rejection, and then the third one for self-sabotage that I pay attention to. And again, I'm just sharing my experiences with you to help you move into a higher self, a higher way of thinking, looking at different things from outside the box, seeing the perception from a different angle, if you will, is procrastination and avoidance. Not dealing with problems. A lot of us will move away, myself included. I still do this today. Avoidance at times is if there's, especially in today's society with the social media crap that we see, people being mean behind a keyboard, people commentating on politics or different religions, and really, I'm just tired of people just being mean to one another. That's our history, I get it, but I try to avoid that. And so that's a protective measure for me, but I always want to remind myself, do I want to be right or do I want to be at peace? And a lot of times, younger me would want to be right and defend it and debate it and argue it. Now I just want to be at peace. So that's something that I would offer to you this morning, just as some advice for your spiritual path. If you're on the spiritual path, if you're just awakening, if you've had a shakening that's caused awakening like myself, that's moving you into going into asking deeper questions about life after death. What am I here for? What's my purpose? Go to marclainhart.com. Let's do a session. Let's do a little bit of exploring through mind, body, and spirit to see if we can find some answers for you. You can also catch me every Monday morning here on Metaphysical Mocha Mondays, followed by the Prospecting Q&A after show, and then every Wisdom Wednesday of Inspired Living Radio, where we have amazing guests. And we're booked out till July now, so we have some pretty good shows coming up, and that airs through the internet. It's internet-based radio, and it's at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, and we have call-in lines. You can go to our Facebook page, which is Inspired Living Radio, become an inspired listener. So these are ways to tap into, question. I always say life is short, question everything. So thank you so much for tuning in this morning. Please share out to another page if you like. We're talking about self-sabotage versus self-worth. So a lot of times that self-sabotage, like I said, that cycle, that vicious cycle, we want to change that. We want to get into a different way of thinking. Faulty thinking, fear of intimacy or rejection, procrastination and avoidance, not dealing with the problems. Those are ways that we can really self-sabotage ourselves. Check out neuroplasticity, about rewiring the brain. Science is showing that we do have the ability to rewire our brain, whether through its trauma, which was for me to rewire my journey and my way of thinking. It could be a traumatic brain injury. It could be just a traumatic loss. I mean, the brain is capable of always changing. And if you want to go further, look at neuroplasticity and look at the familiarity heuristic. Those are two concepts. They're in the psychology arena, but they might be something of interest for you. Self-sabotage is not a one-size-fits-all. I'm not saying the same self-sabotage that I have with my journey and what I have is the same for you. But it's not one-size-fits-all. It's different for everybody. But when you start to identify and get into this concept of your conscious mind and your unconscious mind and identifying, sometimes the biggest thing is awareness, and awareness is your greatest agent for change. Eckhart Tolle reminds us of that. So if you're tired, if you're stressed, if you have fear for me is false evidence appearing real, or you're worried about failure, for me, I just flip script now and I say fear, I don't fear that, false evidence appearing real. Failure, first attempt in learning. Okay, I'm here to learn something. I'm not going to fail from it. If I do, I'm going to fail often. I'm going to fail big, because that's how you grow. No pressure, no diamond. You evolve, you transform, you unfold. Go to your roots, root cause analysis. What is causing this self-sabotage? Is it something that stems from your childhood? For me, a lot of my self-sabotage comes from my childhood. Something I'm writing about in my book, and kind of a vulnerable place to be in. But a lot of my childhood was very, very difficult, and then surrounded by the trauma of losing my brothers and my father-in-law and having a near-death experience. All combined has created who I am today and the path that I'm on. So go to your roots. So one of I call it the 4 R's. Roots, rest, reflect, rejuvenate. I call it the 4 R's. Again, go into your roots. Rest. Rest is very important. Sleep, meditation. I do meditation and Qigong. And then I reflect on what I'm receiving. And then I rejuvenate and I move forward. Do I want to go back to that? Or do I want to move forward and have a life that's happy and inspired and healthy? So that's the self-sabotage category. But now let's get into the good stuff. Let's get into about the self-worth. And the self-worth is something, again, I'm just sharing my journey of the self-sabotage that I went through. I don't want to be a psychic. I don't want to be a medium. What if I'm not good enough? What if I get it wrong? And then I started to move into self-worth because there's a lot of healing that comes from the work that I do, either the healing for myself, the healing from somebody else. Seeing just, last night, just talking at dinner, a nice couple from England was sitting next to us at dinner, and we started talking to them. I asked them if they knew about a college in England, Stansted. They did, and I said, the locals call it Spook College or Hogwarts, and then they asked me, well, why have you been going for the last 5 years to study? And I talked about metaphysics, I talked about psychic sciences, I talked about mediumship, and all of a sudden her mom came through, and you could see just a little bit of a tear in her eye, and I said, it's just as simple as mom coming through to say hi. And I didn't get into a message because I'm very mindful of people's respect for their boundaries, but I just was given an example, but I could see the connection to her mom, and I could feel that, and she could feel that, and they were a really nice couple, probably in their late 70s, I would say, but just here visiting the States, and I love those interactions. But when you move into this work and you see the real value of doing it, not from being famous, not from being on TV, not from making hundreds of thousands of dollars, but really seeing the interaction of healing and the symbiotic relationship between our world and the unseen world, and the connections and healing and peace and knowledge and love that it brings from the other side. That's why I do the work. I love it. And that wasn't always the case. I've got here through many trials and tribulations to be at this point, many years of self-development, understanding, going to England to study. So self-worth, what is the definition of self-worth? Self-worth is the opinion you have about yourself and the value you place on yourself. Some people may call that karma. I say karma is just a series of learning opportunities. Some people say, well, if I do good, I'm going to get good back. If I do bad, I'm going to get bad back. That's based on you. I always say focus on the positive things that are always coming your way. But here's some things to help you with your self-worth. If you're suffering and you're in that vicious cycle of the low self-esteem that leads you to self-sabotage, here's some things to help you get out of that cycle and break that cycle, if you will. And like I said, if you're searching for that one person that will change your life, take a look in the mirror, because it comes from within. So use positive affirmations correctly. Affirmations, I'm a big believer that our words carry a vibration, our words carry a frequency, our words carry energy, and if you're having positive affirmations, that can really help you from the moment you wake up. If you're feeling down through the day, before you go to bed, have a positive affirmation. Identify your competencies and develop them. I didn't always know that I was going to do psychic work or be a medium. I didn't know that I was going to do this, to be honest with you, and I didn't want to do it for a long time. Sometimes we're picked, sometimes we don't raise our hands, but now that I was moved into this arena to do this work, I started to identify my competencies and learned how to develop them. That's why I started off at the Berkeley Psychic Institute in California, went to the Omega Institute in upstate New York, that led me to the Arthur Findlay College in England for the last 7 years now, because I was on a 2-year journey before I got to AFC, but I've been going to AFC for the last 5 years, and now moving into a new arena of development and study and kind of becoming a teacher, if you will. I was really honored to finish my mentorship program with Mavis Patillo, and being told that I'm ready to move to that next step, to be a teacher and to be on the platform and travel around. And it's very humble and a little scary too, to be honest with you. But it's identifying my competencies and having time and patience. The two of the big pillars I teach on: trust and patience. You have to trust what you're getting, but you also have to be patient. It's not going to happen overnight, guys. So for those of you that are watching that want it to happen tomorrow, it's not going to happen. This is 13 years in the making for me, guys. So develop your competencies, identify your competencies, and then find a teacher, find a mentor, find a workshop. There's all sorts of great people. If you want more information, go to my site. I can definitely recommend you to some amazing teachers, some amazing mentors. A few that come to mind: Tony Stockwell, Mavis Patillo, Eamon Downing, Jackie Wright, Penny Hayward. Those are just more of the mediums I'm thinking of. Janet Nohavik, she's got a church in New Jersey. I know Lisa Williams does a lot of good work. I know Thomas John does a lot of good work. Those are some of the real, John Holland. Those are really well-known psychic mediums, and all they're great teachers. I've seen them all demonstrate. I've been in their workshops. I've learned directly from them. So I would highly recommend all of them. But what you want to do is learn to accept compliments as well as you move. I have a hard time accepting compliments, I'll be honest with you, but I'm learning to accept compliments, and that's not always an easy thing, but it's also your self-worth. People are giving you a compliment back, and that's self-worth as well, because you've helped change their lives. And sometimes we don't always see that as light workers, right? As spiritualists, we don't always see that we're making a difference in somebody's life, but that's why we do the work. The difference within our own life and the change that takes place within us, but also the difference in change that we take and help with somebody else. So eliminate self-criticism and introduce self-compassion. That's a big one. That's one of my mantras, actually, is to eliminate self-criticism and to introduce self-compassion. So if I find myself, and usually this is the case when I haven't meditated in a couple days, I move into that self-criticism, I move into that vicious cycle of low self-esteem, and then it's a reminder, I need to move into a place of self-compassion. I need to be kind, caring, and compassionate, and I can do that through healing, through a good book, through just rest and rejuvenating, getting out into nature, and then just affirm your self-worth. It's always great to affirm your self-worth. I always say, believe it, see it, achieve it. Dare to dream, dare to explore, dare to live. These are all my affirmations that I use daily and that I share out on my public site at marclainhart.com. So there's a self-worth theory. It's based on motivation. I want to give this to you before we end, and then we'll move into the prospecting Q&A after show. Like I said, make sure to like, subscribe, turn on the notifications so you can hang out with me every Monday morning, 8 a.m. for Mocha Mondays, inspirational messages for the week ahead, followed at 8:30 Pacific Standard Time, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which I am 11:30 Eastern right now because I'm in Miami, Florida, right behind me. And we can do the prospecting Q&A after show where it's spiritual chats, conversations, and I have a direct conversation with you. So to wrap up, the self-worth theory, which is motivation, is your ability, your effort, your performance, your self-worth. So if you want to write those down, your ability, your effort, your performance, and your self-worth. I find that self-acceptance, when it comes to our self-worth, is often found through our achievements. And I did this myself. I got my undergrad in business management. I got my graduate studies in sports medicine and human performance, but I wasn't satisfied with that. And those were achievements. And a lot of my family never went to college. And I was doing it because I had that as an achievement. I spent 8 years in the Coast Guard. I'm a veteran. That's an achievement, but I wasn't satisfied with the status quo of that. So the theory of the self-worth theory, and you guys can just Google that, self-worth theory on motivation. Again, your ability, what ability do you have? Because we don't all have the same abilities. I always reflect on my niece, Sarah, who has severe cerebral palsy and has not been able to walk on her own or to be able to run, so she doesn't have that ability to do what I can do, but she does have the ability to work within her mind and do different things that I wouldn't be capable of doing. So your ability is very important. What kind of effort are you choosing? Your effort, your free will and choice are the greatest powers you have while you're here, guys. So what kind of effort are you putting in? You get in what you put in, you get out what you put in, right? And so that's the universal laws of this day and age. I guess you could get on Amazon and type it up and order it and it'll come to your doorstep. But again, the self-worth theory is about ability, effort, your performance, and your self-worth. Self-acceptance is often found through achievements. In turn, achievement is often found through competition with others. And thus, the logic follows that competing with others can help us feel we have an impressive achievements under our belt, which then makes us feel proud of ourselves and enhances our acceptance of ourselves. So competition is a good thing. I always say the only person you should be in competition with is yourself. I even find in doing this work in the spirituality work, the metaphysical world and mediumship, there's very much competitive nature. There's cliques. I'm not into that. That's not why I do this work. But you should only be in competition with yourself. That's your higher self. How can you be the best that you are while you're here? So that's called the self-worth theory. It's based on motivation. I hope that would help you today. Talking about self-worth, talking about self-sabotage. If you like what I'm talking about, leave a comment. I'll try to respond after the show if I can. Make sure to get on my YouTube channel, Soul Adventures, under Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector, and make sure to stick around. I'll be back here in about a minute for the Prospecting Q&A after show. I do have to get set up for that. But your crystal for the week, I always try to give you a crystal and a totem animal for the week. And it's fitting because the card that I picked today is the Swan card. And it's you are beautiful just as you are. That's your totem animal. You got a dragonfly, so pay attention to the dragonfly. And the swan, I know it's backwards, but you are beautiful just as you are is your spirit, totem animal spirit for the week. So I picked two cards today for numerology. The first one is domestic harmony. It's a 46. The 4 is about focusing. The 6 is about self-love and what you want to move into. The domestic harmony is being in harmony with yourself, but also the environment card, which is upside down. So these two together, these are my numerology cards, and look at that, double 44. It's all about focusing on what you want to do, and it's an angel number as well. So move into your environment. The green is also the heart chakra, which is based here. I always find that the heart chakra is our greatest connection from the unseen world to the physical world and vice versa, that symbiotic relation. So environment and domestic harmony are your numbers for the week. So 4s and 6s, focusing and self-love, which ties in today's message. I love that. And last but not least, before I wrap up, rose quartz. Rose quartz is really nice for healing, and it's really nice for moving into that mantra that I was telling you about having self-compassion versus self-sabotage. Eliminate self-criticism and introduce self-compassion. So that's today's message. I hope that has helped in some way. And again, self-worth is so vital to our happiness. If you don't feel good about you, it's hard to feel good about anything else. And if you're searching for that one person that'll make a change in your life, take a look in the mirror. So I want to thank you for hanging out with me this morning here live from Miami, Florida. I hope that you have a great rest of your week. I know that I'm going to. And I'll be back here in about a minute for the Prospecting Q&A after show. Thanks for hanging out with me on Mocha Mondays, and I'll see you over on the airwaves of Inspired Living Radio this Wednesday at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern through the Om Times Radio Network. You can get all the information at marclainhart.com, all my articles, all my podcasts, and I'd love to have you subscribe to my YouTube playlist. So have a great rest of your week. Until our next soul adventure together, be kind, be caring, be compassionate. Stick around. I'll be back here in 30 seconds for the Prospecting Q&A after show. Have a great week, everybody. Namaste.